Today I will be teaching you how to make this truly iconic retro 70s crochet daisy granny square.
To get started, you will need to make a magic ring.
This will form the centre of our seed of our flower.
And then we're going to put 8 single crochets into this ring.
Try not to crochet too tightly at this point, as we will need to go back into these stitches to work further crochet stitches into this round.
6, 7, 8. Once we have 8 single crochets, join to the first stitch of the round. Pull through a loop and then pull the tail of your yarn to close the gap. Now we're going to chain 1. In the same stitch, we're going to put another single crochet. Then we're going to go into the next stitch and put in 2 single crochets.
This will be repeated all the way round. So here we want to form 16 stitches into our 8 stitches for an increase of 2 stitches per stitch that we did initially. This will form the second row of our seed part of our flower. Don't forget, when we get to the end, we will need to form a final double crochet to close the row off so that we have our 16 stitches, as we only put 1 at the start.
And 16. We should now have 16 stitches. So again, join to the first stitch of the round, pull a loop up and pull through. We can now fasten off.
We can weave in our ends, tidying our circle, making it nice and secure. For this, I'm using a tapestry needle and a needle threader. Just go into the back rings of your loop and pull them through. And we're going to do that to the top as well, and then we can cut off and get rid of our scrap yarn.
In this part of the tutorial, we're going to be moving on to this gold colour for the petal. So we're going to create a slip knot and then fasten off into a space for the petal. So it'll look like any space that's got a little V in it, and then we're going to chain 3. This chain 3 will count as the first part of our double crochet. Yarn over, go into the stitch, and we're going to put 2 double crochets into this stitch. There's 1, and then we're going to chain 1. We're then going to skip a stitch, go into the next stitch, yarn over, go into the next stitch, so we've got 1 remaining here, and put in 3 double crochets. Chain 1. And then skip a stitch and put in 3 double crochets into the next space. We're going to repeat this until we have 8 clusters of 3 double crochet stitches in every other stitch. I'm going to repeat this and then I will meet you for the next part. I'm just finishing the last double crochet of this round, and once we get to the end of this round we are again going to chain one. We'll go into the top of our stitch of the first round, pull through and draw up a large loop and drop in a stitch marker. We're not going to cut off the wool, we are going to leave it fastened and attached to our work. At the end of this I have pulled up my loop, I've left it attached to my ball, and I've attached a stitch marker to the back. I'm now going to join on with my next colour, which is this green colour here. I'm going to join with a slip stitch, and I'm going to go into my next space. I'm going to push my petals back and I'm going to go into the stitch after this stitch here. So I'm going to join on, through there, pull up a loop, and then I am going to tuck the tail behind me out of the way. I can weave that in later, and then I'm going to chain 3. Once I've chained 3, I'm going to get another stitch marker and I'm just going to drop my stitch marker in there, and then I'm going to chain a further 4. This chain 3 will count as a double crochet, so I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go into the next skipped stitch, and I'm going to put in a double crochet into that stitch, and then I'm going to chain 4. I'm then going to go into the next skip stitch and put in a double crochet and then chain 4. I'm going to repeat this all the way around till I get to the end. So I'm now at the end and I'm going to remove my stitch marker from the top of this chain 3, which will have given me a bit of a loop, and then I'm going to use that to create a slip stitch into that top stitch. I'm then going to chain 1 just to secure it and then draw up a very large loop, and then I'm going to insert another stitch marker into the top of that loop. Now we can push our yellow petals through at the front, or to the front I should say. Then we're going to find our stitch marker with our long loop on there, and we're going to bring it through so that this stitch or this loop creates the first stitch of our row. So if I go into this one, it's obviously going to be at the back, so I want it in this first stitch. So I'm going to use my stitch marker to loop it through, pull that through, and then I have that at the front. So then I'm going to pull the tail of my working yarn until that's tightened and is just a draw through loop. I'm then going to hook my green over the top of my stitch marker and move my green yarn to the other side of me so it doesn't get tangled. Once I've done that, I'm then set to start on my next row. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker and replace it with my hook. Now I'm going to chain 3, and then once I've chained 3, this is going to count as my first double crochet for that row. So I'm going to put in another double crochet, and then into the next space put another double crochet, and then into the next space put another double crochet. So in this row now I will have 4 double crochets, or a chain 3 that counts as a double crochet. I'm then going to chain 2, and this is going to skip over this space here. So again, pushing my yellow petals to the front now, I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to put in a double crochet in here. I'm going to increase, so I'm going to put 2 in this first one. Whoops, I've picked up my green yarn there. Okay, I'm just going to pull it out of my way. So another double crochet, and then chain 2. Push your petal through at the front, yarn over, go into the next stitch, another double crochet, and another double crochet, and then 2 more double crochets in here, and then I can continue this on, and then I'll meet you at the end of this. So I've just completed this first row, and I'm going to slip stitch into the top of this chain now, draw up a long loop and pop in our stitch marker. Now we're going to pop that out of the way, and we're going to find our stitch marker that's attached to our green stitches, and we're going to bring these to the front. So it should be the one that's level with the knot or the top of the single hoop. So we're going to pull it through there like so. I'm going to move this ball to this side and switch the green to this side now. Keep that out of my way. I can then replace my stitch marker for my hook. And then I can tighten my space there. And then once I've done that, I'm going to chain 3. This is going to count as my first double crochet. So I'm going to go into that stitch, draw up a loop, and put a double crochet into that stitch. Then once I've put my 2 double crochets in, or I've got my chain 3 and my double crochet, I'm then going to chain 5. And then I'm going to go back into the top of the stitch, and I'm going to put in a double crochet in that space and another double crochet. So you want 2 double crochets in each one of these spaces, and then chain 5, and back into the next one. So if we just bring it to the front, makes it easier. And another double crochet in that space, and then we're going to chain 5 again. And we're going to repeat this all the way around until we get back to the start. So I'll meet you back at the start and I'll continue on with this row. So I'm now going to move on to the next colour. I have pulled my yarn through to the front, the same as on the previous round. I can then close up and use my crochet hook instead of the
stitch marker.
I'm going to chain through. I'm going to push this out of my way, chain 3. This will count as a stitch. I'm then going to go into my next stitch and put in an increase and put in a double crochet in there, and then a double crochet in each one of the rounds. So you should now have 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochets, put in another double crochet at the end of the round for an increase. So now you should have 5. Put that out. So we're going to then chain 3, jump over, push this yarn up, yarn over, go into the top here and put in a double crochet, followed by another double crochet for our increase, followed by a double crochet, another double crochet, and a further double crochet, increase at the end, and then chain 2. We're going to go into our next stitch, and we're going to put in 2 double crochets in here, another double crochet and another double crochet increase here, like so. So it should start to look like this.
Continue on and I'll meet you at the next part.
So now we're going to make this part of the petal round. So I've chained 1 to start at the end of that row. So now I'm going to go into that same stitch and put a single crochet. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch and I'm going to put in 5 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I'm going to skip a stitch and put a single crochet into there. So that will make our petal go round. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to put a single crochet into that first stitch, and then 5 double crochets into the next stitch, oops, put a single crochet into the, skip a stitch, and then put a single crochet into the back of that stitch. We're going to repeat this the whole way round. So chain 2, single crochet, and then 5 double crochets into the next stitch.
This pattern will now be repeated the whole of the round. I'll meet you back at the start.
Now going to join on, and I can then cut off our yarn.
At this point, this is the last part of our flower.
So now we can move on to our next colour. So we're going to find the back, pull our yarn through, remove our stitch marker, draw up the loop to the correct size. We're going to chain 3, and then we are going to put in a double crochet into that stitch, and another double crochet. So we'll have 3, as this one counts as a double crochet. Then we're going to turn our work and we're going to find the back. So into the back now, it's where we put our 5 double crochets. We are now, where we chained 5 crochets, we're now going to put 5 double crochets into that space.
We're now going to repeat this the whole way round and then slip stitch, and then I'll meet you at the end of this row.
A top tip here is when you're coming over and you're coming into this row, is if you put your finger underneath, you can then lift up your yarn and push it through, so you get a better position on where you're putting your thread. And if you look at the back, I'm holding that down so it's out of my way completely, so it just makes it a lot easier when you're trying to put in your stitches. And then when we want to work on the back, if we then fold this stitch over, we can then yarn over and put our stitch through there like so. And it just makes it that little bit easier. So all we need to do now is to slip stitch into the top of that stitch. So now we can see that our pattern has become a circle, and we want to make this into a granny square. Then we're going to put in a double crochet into that next stitch. In the next stitch along, which should be your last part of the chain, we're going to put in 2 double crochets. Then we're going to chain 2. Then in the same stitch, we're going to put in another 2 double crochets. So I've just put a stitch marker in the top of my first corner just to remind me where I started. So now I'm going to put 6 further single crochets in the next stitches along. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then I'm going to put in a half double crochet, then 2 double crochets, then you should be back at the spaces behind. So we're then going to put in another 2 double crochets, chain 2, and then in the same stitch put 2 more double crochets, and then we're going to repeat that all the way around. So we're going to put our 6 single crochets into the next spaces, and just check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 half double crochet, 2 double crochets, two, and then we can form our next part of our corner. So we're then just going to repeat that the whole way round. So for this round, we will chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Place a stitch marker into the top of this round. This will form our very first corner. Into the next stitch, we are then going to put a double crochet, and then we will chain 2. Into the next 4 stitches, put double crochets. Then we're going to put in 2 half double crochets, and then we're going to put in 4 single crochets. Then 2 half double crochets, followed by 2 double crochets that are standalone, and then we're going to have our 2 double crochets that form our corner. So 1, 2, and then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to put in 2 more double crochets into the next stitches. So those are for our corner, and then we're going to put 2 double crochets on their own. So now we're then going to go in with our half double crochets. We want 2 of those, and then 4 single crochets, 3, 4, then 2 half double crochets, 1, and 2, then 2 double crochets that are part of the body of the stitch, and then 2 double crochets that will form our corner, chain 2, then 2 further double crochets which will form the other side of the corner. Then we want 2 further double crochets, followed by a half double crochet, and then another half double crochet into the next stitch. Then we're going to put in our 4 singles, then we're going to put in our half double crochet followed by another half double crochet, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, grab the yellow there, 2 double crochets.
We'll follow this pattern along until we meet ourselves back at the end and we have 4 corners.
Once you get to the end of the round, we're then going to slip stitch into the top of our chain 2. Then we are going to chain 2, which will form as our first crochet. So we're then going to put another double crochet into that space. Then we're going to put 2 double crochets in the next space. Then we're going to put 2 double crochets in the next space. Chain 2, and in that same space we'll put 2 more double crochets, and then we're going to put 2 double crochets in each one of the spaces all the way around until we get to the end. So I'll meet you back, we'll do that twice, and then I'll meet you back at the end.
So once it's finished, it will look something like this. I've just wet it and I'm now going to block it, and I'll show a picture at the end. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and found it useful.